We'll call to order the Monday, October 14th, 2022 Town of Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, regular meeting. Again, it's about 7:03. Start with the seating of alternates. We are only missing Jerry. I'd like to seat Doug for Jerry.
Jeff, I don't see Mark either.
Oh, Mark Schnabel, thank you. Okay, so Luther, I guess we're going to sit you too. Thank you, Alex. John and Jerry. All right. Second item, approval. You have to excuse me. I had a crown this afternoon, so if I don't speak well, it's more than just the normal gobbledygook I usually spew. Okay, approval of minutes from April 14th, 2022. Do we have input on that? Either approval, corrections, adjustments?
I think you meant February 14th,
What did I say?
April.
I said April? Wow, that had nothing to do with my crown, okay? I was looking right at February here. Okay, good start. February 14th, 2022. Thank you, Janet.
I'll move to accept the minutes for February.
Anyone second?
I'll second. Alex.
That was Alex. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I will abstain. Nord Yacobo.
Nord wasn't there.
And Catherine, I wasn't there either.
And Catherine, thank you very much. 2 abstentions. Okay. So moved. We will open up with public comments and just some housekeeping on the public comments. It will be 1 comment per person is allowed. You may speak up to 3 minutes for your time. And please, the ideal situation is to speak only of items pending or pertinent to planning and zoning, as opposed to a free-form dissertation. And I remind that the Planning and Zoning Commission members that public comment is not a back and forth. It's our job to listen to the comments being made. It's not a time for questions back and forth. Now, commentary by the board. And if we do receive a question, we take the question in for advisement and we'll respond back during a regular meeting if that topic is not on the current agenda. So anyone for public comment at this point?
Not seeing anybody on my end.
Okay, my boss taught me to count to 13, so we're there. No public comment. Alex, any bills?
I don't have any bills right now.
No bills to issue. Okay. So with that, we will go to a presentation of the plan of affordable housing. And just to let you know, and this is a presentation to all members of the committee as well as town committee chairs were invited or to send a designee. And the presentation itself is not the plan, but it's how we're going to get to the plan and what we need to do. And with that, I believe Michael will share his screen and provide a presentation. Again, just for those I'm not in the know, we are working with Michael's company, Tyke. Michael?
Yep, just give me 1 second. I'm gonna pull it up and we'll go from there.
No, actually, I was looking for the proper pronunciation of your company.
Oh,
Tyke.
Tyke.
Tyke Planning. And again, we've contracted with them for this additional effort. We need to have a plan of affordable housing in place by July 1 of this year. And we did receive a grant to help offset the funds from the state toward this. So with that being said, whenever Michael is ready, he can do the presentation.
Okay. Just give me 1 second to pull it up. and
Take
share
your
my
time.
screen. Okay.
While Michael works to bring that up, I forgot to mention something, that there was a training session that was presented in conjunction with and through Tyke and Halloran Sage. And I want to thank the members that were able to attend. It was a bit of a refresher for some. Hopefully some good information was gleaned out of it. I believe Michael said it was taped. So we have the ability to watch that tape if you want to follow up, weren't able to attend that evening for the commission members.
Yeah, I do have a recording which I can share. Okay, so I'm going to try to share. Hopefully you can see this, and hopefully it's the sort of not the presenter view. Can you see the sort of the cover page there? It's March 14th, 2022.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So the point of the presentation here is basically to introduce the idea of the affordable housing plan and basically the project that the town is about to go through. So let me make sure that this is actually swapping over for us. All right, so very quickly, I am a member of the Tyke Planning and Policy Group. We are a local planning company that basically this is what we do. We serve towns. So I work as the town's zoning official, but we also work in a number of other capacities for a number of communities. So we're a team of 4. Our office is in Vernon, and I've been working for Ashford for about 3 years now. Affordable housing plans is, as I said, part of what we do. And I've just given you a brief list of some of the communities, some of the towns nearby that we've written these plans for already, just to give you a sense of, we're not inventing the wheel from scratch here. We are drawing upon the various things that we've learned and come up with for a number of other towns and using that as a foundation, not sort of pulling these things out of the sky. So what are affordable housing plans? Recently, I think it originally came on board to 2017. The state passed an amendment 8-30 of the Connecticut General Statutes. The section is 8-30J, which requires towns every 5 years to amend and adopt an affordable housing plan. And as it says there in yellow, such plan shall specify how the municipality intends to increase the number of affordable housing developments in the municipality. So what we are not doing is picking out pieces of land where we're going to move forward with an affordable housing development. We are establishing a plan for how the town will encourage additional affordable housing in Ashford. And there's a number of ways that we can do that. It says that the town may hold public informational meetings. You may hold a public hearing, but the statute does not require it. The statute also does not say who adopts the plan. Some towns choose to do it through the Board of Selectmen. Some towns adopt a special committee. Other towns do it through the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is the approach that we're taking here because Ashford's a smaller community. So purpose and goals, what do these plans look to achieve? So the first thing that we look to achieve is the 8-30J mandate, which says we have to have it. We want to have a community conversation. We want to have realistic goals set forth in the plan that we can implement rather than making this something that sits on a shelf because it's sort of a blue sky planning document that doesn't make sense for Ashford. Or is such a big, heavy lift that we really can't actually get these things off the ground. So yeah, we want to really create that implementation roadmap, as we call it, which is the way that we're going to go from where we are to the vision of the plan. These plans are 5-year plans. They're not 10 years like the POCD. They're not strategic plans over, many years. So, they're much smaller. And we want to keep that in mind as we move through the process, because it's not like a POCD that is a community-based document that's good for a decade. So because these things change a little bit more frequently, it's a little shorter term. So we want to be realistic, as I mentioned, in how we kind of develop this. The last thing is, again, that this is Ashford's plan. So things that make sense here might only make sense here. So what Mansfield is doing, or Willington, or Hampton, or Coventry, et cetera, they might be a good place to start, but there are very different things in each community, as you well know, that make certain things feasible or completely ludicrous. And we'll really be focusing on what will work here in Ashford. So quickly, the plan basically will use the term affordable all over and over and over again, but there's basically two types of ways that we'll use this term: capital A, affordable, and then sort of small a, affordable. Capital A affordable are affordable housing units that meet the definitions to actually be counted towards the town's affordable housing stock requirement. So towns are required to have, or encouraged to have, at least 10% of their housing stock as deed restricted affordable. Those include the income restrictions, which are 40 years, incentive housing, which Ashford does not have, which would be 30, any government assisted housing, or CHFA USDA mortgages, and they also include rental assistance for tenants. So those qualify as an affordable housing unit. And then the other side to this is our housing units, which are affordable in that they are reasonably priced, but they are still considered to be market rate, in that the rent can go up or down based on the fluctuating demand. They're not deed restricted, and the cost of the unit per month or whatever is not at all tied to any obligations. It's not compared for affordability or based upon affordability rates set out by the federal government. They're what is referred to as naturally occurring, meaning they just exist organically. So both are really important, and you want as many as possible, but they're not the same thing. And so for the purposes of this plan, we are speaking only of capital A affordable, the units which the Department of Housing says contribute to our 10% goal.
Yeah, Mike, this is Dick. If I could interject here, we looked at affordable housing as one of the things in the last POCD. And one of the things that we found at that time, and I'd be curious if you could update the number, of the 169 jurisdictions in the state, there were none that met the 10% threshold. And Ashford obviously didn't meet the 10% threshold. Where does that stand now?
So there are a number of communities which are above the 10%, and we will certainly get into that as part of the plan. Obviously for rural communities that have low housing stock, but also don't have the development demand, don't have sewer and water, those types of things make it much more complicated when you're trying to add these units. But there are a number of communities which are at or above the 10%. And we'll certainly get into that as part of this.
And Michael, just one quick thing, and just to be clear, Dick, you were a little off, because back in 2015, it was 131 out of the 169 towns did not meet, but 38 towns did meet the 10% threshold at that time.
Apologize, I don't have that in front of me, but I remember having the discussion.
It was low.
with-
It was a low number. Yes. Thank you. Sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
No worries. Okay, so the next piece here is kind of gets into what affordable housing can look like. Part of this plan will be education. It'll be making sure that everybody understands what these housing units do, how important they are to the fabric of each community, but also that they are not large institutional buildings that are 10 stories that, you know, is what you think about from 50 or 60 years ago. So, you know, I'm sure almost all of you already know that this is the town's Pompey Hollow project, which is across from Town Hall. And there are specific requirements for eligibility in these units, but they fall within the requirement. So these units, there are 32, they count towards Ashford's 10%. And they work towards that number, and they are, the eligibility is based upon, in part, looking at what they're calling households earning at or below 80% AMI, which is area median income, which is one of the things that we use to determine if a unit is eligible to be restricted and count. This is another development, which is in Old Saybrook, 16 rental apartments, same thing, households earning at or below 80% AMI. And it's a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, but again, not institutional, not scary. Just wanted to sort of set the table for what we're thinking about as we start to talk about why Ashford may want to encourage some of these things. Another example is the Northfield Firehouse in Litchfield, which was basically a redevelopment, adaptive reuse to rental apartments, one of which is universally accessible. And as I said, it was previously a firehouse. They used some grant monies to make this happen, and they've got some green initiatives, including geothermal, to make the building a little bit more environmentally friendly. Here's another example of Stewart Farms in Kent. Initially 5 rental apartments. They did some work with the town sanitary sewer, and then they've got rents which are restricted based upon the size of the units. There's some income limits here, which again fluctuate based on the location and the size of the family. So a 1 bedroom for one person would not be restricted the same as a 4 bedroom 4 person. Another example recently done in Essex. This is 52 rental units over 3 buildings. There are 3 contiguous parcels which were essentially separated with a 0 foot lot line setback, so they could put each building on a separate parcel for septic management for the state DPH, public health. This was an 8-30G affordable housing unit application. 16 of these are deed restricted as affordable, and they had 100% occupancy within the first year. The other important note here is that as of 2020 had produced 0 net children to the school systems. Affordable housing units produce less children per unit than traditional developments, and the only children in this district or in this area had actually come from other units in town, so there was no increase to the schools. Couple of other things related to what we call myths about affordable housing. First one being property values, that affordable housing, low-income housing is going to detract from existing housing values, property values. There's tons of data at this point that basically demonstrates that there is no impact to nearby home values based on these projects. We can get into more of that when we start working on the plan, but this is one thing that kind of comes up a lot, which we'll try to work through and kind of create an educational component as we move through this. The other one, as I alluded to, school burdens. This basically shows you that multifamilies, whether they be deed restricted or not, do not produce massive or even the same amount of school-age children. So this is not going to be a burden to the community from a school-age children population perspective, especially as we look at a town like Ashford where we pay. This is not something where we have a school and we just can fill it up. The third component, which I've tried to kind of layer into the presentation, all using the photos, is that you can't have developments which are affordable housing eligible that are consistent with the community character, which I know is a word we can't use, but 8-30G has been around for many, many, many years. It was originally conceptualized in the 70s and 80s related to increasing housing prices. Not all developments under these affordable units need to require that every single unit be restricted. So you can have 70% of these units be market rate. And in Ashford, lack of public infrastructure and potentially poor soils will always limit what can happen. But these units do not need to look like, you know, as I mentioned, large institutional style buildings. And we can, like I said, we'll explore that as we move through this. Very quickly, what is Ashford's current status? So the table at the top will show you all the total dwelling units based on the census, and then the number of dwelling units which qualify. So there are 32 which are government assisted currently. There are 32 which fall under the CHFA USDA mortgages, for a total of 64 units which qualify as affordable, or 3.3%. The second table gives you a breakdown of the town's housing stock, how it is compiled. So we've got 1,500 units which are single family detached, and it kind of runs the breakup. It kind of breaks it down from there all the way to mobile homes and units of 50 or more, et cetera. So you can see, obviously, the lion's share is 1 and 2 family. This is just a quick search, which I pulled from the town's assessor's database, to give you a look at the town's total apartment complexes. So we have 227 units, which are falling under the apartment category. I've given you the parcel size and the density because I think it's really interesting to see that we have, for example, 57 to 69 Barger Road, 25 units, which is roughly 10 units an acre. We require about 90,000 square feet, or 2 acres, for a single family home, but we have existing apartments which have been, you know, on the books for many years, which are significantly higher than that. Many of these things exist currently and are silent, right? So it's this idea that we can support things like this, and they're not necessarily as disruptive as they might seem. The last thing that I am going to kind of go over as far as the data is why we shouldn't do nothing. This is some stuff which I pulled from the Partnership for Strong Communities. It lists the graphic at the top lists the calls for assistance to 211. So you'll see on the left the lines for each. So the first one was for shelters, the second being low cost housing, the third being support related to home repairs and maintenance, and then rental assistance and mortgage assistance. So a lot of these are related to housing. There are folks which are looking for support in these areas. The sort of line graph at the bottom shows you up to 2019 population, and obviously you can see that it's flattened out fairly significantly and has sort of stabilized. And then the right-hand side graphic shows you the age cohorts for the current population. So the one that's shown at 19 there is the 50 to 59 age range, which is traditional for what we see in most communities. They have that age cohort, which is very large and moving through, but not necessarily seeing that infill of younger families moving in to buy those homes and to sort of backfill on some of those categories or those age cohorts. As you can see, they're kind of dropping off as you get younger. Affordable housing plan process. This is what we will kind of go through, the step-by-step process. So we will start with a demographic and housing analysis where we'll lean in on some of that data that I kind of just showed. And then we will develop, as part of the process with the commission, a community survey. We will go through a regulatory and legal analysis where we look to see if there are zoning regs, ordinances, or components of the POCD which create barriers to these types of developments. We'll then start drafting the plan and working with the commission on the plan components. Then we'll have a public meeting to go over the plan and to seek input. We can talk about the community survey results and really get comments on the plan body, and then move into actually adopting the plan as part of either the POCD or a standalone document. So with that, I know I ran through it kind of fast, but I'm trying to be cognizant of everybody's time, and this is just more of an intro. So I will take any questions that you have. But
Yeah, Mike,
let me just give me 1 second. I just need to connect my computer to power. Hold on 1 second. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, Mike, this is Dick Williams. You listed several towns that are very similar to Ashford, where you've already developed the plans.
Yep.
Could you share copies of those plans with the commission on the shared drop site?
I didn't include the actual plans, though we certainly can. I think that most of those have adopted final versions, which are posted. Certainly, at least a few of them are, and we can. They're not massive sizes like a POCD, but I can certainly make those available and send those out.
Yeah, if you just put them on the shared drive, and the last time I looked at the shared drive, this presentation wasn't on there. Is it on there now?
I will, yeah, because it's in PowerPoint, it's a large size, but I will PDF it and I will add it. I'm thinking of talking to Cheryl about getting a separate portion of the website set aside for the affordable housing plan and kind of making all this available there so that members of the public can find it more easily, but we'll get it up.
Mike, is there a target deadline to have all this completed by? I think it was early on and it just flew by me before I got it in a note.
Yeah, so they want us to have it adopted in June. There is a lot of towns are dealing with this. Ashford and like a number of other places, we have a grant which we're doing this for, and we've been trying to hold off on commencement to hopefully include additional public components as COVID kind of wore off, and then it didn't. So we're at the point now where we have to get going on it, but there's no penalty if the town were to adopt it later.
With the POCD, if we didn't meet the deadlines or get an exception, we were limited in terms of state of Connecticut grants and assistance that we could receive. This doesn't have any strings like that attached to it.
It does not.
Mike, this is Melissa McDonough. Are you just looking at affordable housing, or are you doing anything with low income housing? Just because there's such a need for that as well.
Yeah, so the plan will look at how Ashford can make housing more attainable. So that will include, I think, looking at both of those, recognizing that people need lower income housing, but aside from that, sometimes as folks phase out of the actual restricted affordable housing, they need that next step. They're not necessarily going to go out and buy a 10-acre piece of property with a brand new house on it as that second place to land. So it's all something we'll look at.
That's that capital A versus the small a that you brought up in one of your slides, right?
Yep.
Well, can I just say, I think, Melissa, if we change our regs to make it easier for capital A housing, small a housing will be easier to build as well, which I think is what Mike was saying.
Christine, go ahead. You're muted.
Besides people moving up from affordable into low income, there are a lot of seniors who'd like to move down from single family into low income or smaller, which wouldn't necessarily be affordable housing, which might just be smaller houses that aren't allowed in the current regulations.
Thank you. I'm just taking some notes. And again, I think one of the things that Mike has laid out for us is that, yes, it's a 5-year plan, but it doesn't mean June 1, we have to hit 10% or July 1. It is a plan to move forward and how to do that. Now, obviously, we don't have developers knocking down our door for doing such, but we're going to, I think our plan is basically to, again, as Mike indicated, we're going to analyze what we have and see what we can do from those items that he laid out to continue to move forward or to make it accessible for big A and little a affordable housing. Any other questions from the group? Loretta, I know you've been working with your Conservation Commission and talking about housing units. Any feedback from that group in your discussions?
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask about in any of the programs that Mike has worked on with other towns, has there been any discussion about groups of adults living together, like say for people who are older and can't afford a single house? Was any of that more creative kind of multiple living together situations discussed, or did that come up in any of the other towns? Because I know we have a huge proportion of older people, and I know we also have a lot of people who are living with their old grown children. So when these people die and they've got, like, for instance, a reverse mortgage, so when that parent dies, those adult children are going to be homeless or potentially homeless.
That has come up, and I think that one of the other things that we saw during the last legislative session was that towns now have to allow accessory dwelling units by right, and towns cannot set a minimum house size. So Ashford, we've identified this with the commission. We've got legislative review, and those are text amendments which we have in the works. But we can no longer say that a house has to be 900 square feet, and it's all moved in that. This is all part of that, right? By telling someone that a house has to be 900 square feet, you are essentially telling them that they have a minimum construction cost, which they might not want. We have seen in a lot of towns are working on or implementing regulations, which, you could call them micro units, you can call them cottage clusters. There's a lot of different ways that you can regulate them, but it's this community of smaller homes in a sort of a small village environment where you live in a very small unit in a small community. So that is becoming something that a lot of towns are looking at. Yeah.
And Mike, you talk about towns looking at that, and I'm trying to pull up some of the discussions we had when we revised the residential agricultural zoning regulations. And we looked at all of the surrounding towns in terms of lot size, in terms of minimum house side coverage, all the like of that. And we really didn't find much in any of the surrounding towns that really talked to this cluster housing and small, house size and the like. We also had a lot of discussion around the number of people living in in-law apartments. And we had, debated back and forth what we put into regulations at that time. Have things changed in the surrounding towns such that what we looked at when we revised these regulations really isn't valid anymore?
I mean, I think generally speaking, for the towns that, I'm aware of or that I work in, like, for example, a week and a half ago, we had a considerable discussion in Wellington. We're going through the process there as well about basically allowing or creating cottage cluster developments, incentivizing them, because the other thing that we're seeing, so you can call it a cottage cluster, a micro unit, you can call it a pocket neighborhood, whatever it is. We're basically seeing the death of the starter home, right? People are buying houses now, they're renovating them, trying to get that equity, but they become more expensive. So once they get flipped that first time, they're no longer attainable to a younger generation. So remember, when we're talking about this stuff, towns like Wellington or others, they may have as a recommendation in the affordable housing plan that the town review and consider the establishment of zoning regulations which allow for cottage cluster communities. They're not necessarily going to develop the regs as part of this. They're going to include that as an implementation goal. I'd have to, I know Hampton has some regs which would facilitate something like this, though it's not necessarily called out as that in their current zoning regs. And we're going to work on something in Wellington. So I do think it's changed, but not since only in the last year to 2 years.
And Mike, I wonder, what are other important factors? Are things like access to highways, proximity to shopping, public transportation, are those important factors to consider?
And certainly the more you can provide, the better. Folks that are coming to Ashford, I think, understand that they're going to have to travel further to get certain things. In the communities that have access to something like public transportation, you certainly want to cite those things in a location where folks that may not have access to cars, or a household that has two adults, or but only one vehicle, can make use of public transportation when need be. For a town like Ashford, it may likely be providing housing for folks that are currently here and struggling, or folks that are going to be moving into a fixed income situation and perhaps wanting to downsize as they age. So all of those things are important, but what we've really found is that people are already here or wanting to live here, but they don't have access to the dwelling units that would facilitate it, so they end up being elsewhere.
Yeah, Mike, I don't have the data in front of me right now because I don't have my notes from the POCD development, but we looked at all the existing apartment houses in town, and I think the most recent development probably goes back 20 years or so. So there's been really nothing built as far as apartments in town for quite a time. So, and that, I'm not sure how that will impact on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, the only dwelling unit, the only apartment units which are qualifying to the towns, to the 64, are the 32 at Pompey Hollow. There is not one privately developed, privately held housing unit in Ashford which qualifies as affordable. The only ones that we have are the 32 at Pompey Hollow, and there are 32 CHFA or USDA backed mortgages for single family homes, which also qualify, but there is, not one. So, I mean, that's probably based on the fact that the zoning regs, with the minimum lot size buildable area of 90,000 square feet, to build any type of multifamily, you need a massive amount of land. And so that chart was more just to demonstrate that we have extremely high density existing, which is completely, it completely counters what regulations are on the books. If any of those apartments on Varga, Perry Hill, Cushman wanted to, they said, hey, we have great demand, number of residents want to move in, we want to add another phase. We just want to add another building, or maybe we want to add an addition. The regulations don't provide for it. So, that's something that we would want to look at to see how what we have on the books is a barrier to even continued facilitation of what we do have.
I have a question about this idea, and I think you sort of mentioned in your presentation about what the sense of the community is about affordable housing and what's the imprint that they have on their mind when you start mentioning that. And so I'm wondering about, to do more affordable housing, and there's always that question of what is really affordable, but to do that in our town, it seems like there would need to be a lot of outreach about education in terms of what affordable housing is and who are the people who are residents there, and how do they enhance, impact, detach from the community or whatever. So I'm wondering, that whole presentation that you had of some of the buildings that looked really nice and didn't have that institutional kind of flair, or even an apartment kind of units. When people imagine that, they think about many of the apartment units we already have in Ashford. So is that part of the plan to do what educational kind of outreach, so that people in Ashford are a little bit more informed about what we're talking about when we say affordable?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we do with the survey is we try to gauge where the community is on the issue. Some towns, for lack of a better word, the community seems to get it. They understand what it is, they understand the importance. And there are other towns which do not get it, and they don't see that as providing any value. And that will shift the implementation recommendations. It'll also shift the tone of the plan. If everybody understands it's a good thing, then we don't need to we're not trying to get them there through the drafting of the actual plan. But there are some communities which they're just largely, the populations are against it. And we have to make the plan much more of a call to action, because it's clear that folks are misinformed. And so the first couple of steps of the implementation goals are likely to create a more formal subcommittee or have a community, something, so that this exists more at the forefront more consistently, because people are really busy and they don't necessarily know what's going on all the time. But if most folks don't understand what we're talking about, we want to try to educate them long-term, rather than just participate in our survey. We're going to develop this plan, and now that we've got the box checked, we'll leave it be.
Thank you.
So Michael, I know this isn't a brainstorming session or anything, but one of the things that came to mind for me is that if we have owners of properties, rental properties in town, duplexes or something, and were to offer them, I don't know, again, I don't think we have Board of Finance here who would cut my throat, or selectmen, but tax abatements or tax break or something like that to incentivize them to meet the criteria of affordable housing. That might be part of a plan.
Yep. So one of the things we'll do as we start moving through the plan is, we've created this list of like a menu options, which talk about a number of different things that you can do. I remember we were doing Hampton's plan. They have a historical society that has a building, and they have an apartment above it that they've rented, and they did the math and they said, well, we're within the requirement. So we'd be more than happy to restrict it on, file a restriction on the land records. Doesn't change anything for us, but now the town gets another unit. So there's a lot of things like that that potentially can be done. We can look at all kinds of options, particularly if we find that the market rate units are not that far off from what would be necessary to qualify as deed restricted.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the attendees tonight? If you are interested in this topic to the point of wishing to get involved, please contact Mike at the Land Use Office. We will likely be seeking not only public input, but for lack of a better term, a task force or a group looking to give input on this. We're not working in a bubble. We want input from as many departments and concerned citizens as possible. So again, I thank all of the department heads and designees that are attending tonight for the
I
presentation.
have another, just another quick question for Mike.
You go right ahead, Loretta. Don't let me cut you off.
Oh, okay. I'm just wondering about, the state has done all this mandate regarding housing and everything. Are they looking at how they can help keep affordable units down so that if, for instance, if people want to build a unit, that they could make it affordable? I mean, it seems like they're putting a lot of regulations and restrictions on us as towns to do all this, but I'm wondering, our hands may be tied in terms of our financial limitations. I know Jeff mentioned maybe a tax, break or something, but that's limited too. And I'm just wondering, since they're coming out with these mandates for us, are they also looking at how they can help the economy support this?
So, there are statutory, there are certain structures in place in the statutes which allow towns a fair amount of flexibility in how they might want to implement things to encourage this. They're not necessarily saying, here's some money to go and build this as the town, because their goal is not really, what they want to do is make sure that the towns have done their part in reducing barriers to allow these to happen. They recognize that the market is still going to drive this to a large degree, but there are various types of credits and things on the private side to make these things make more sense from a business standpoint. The whole purpose of 8-30J is in response to 8-30G, which is the Affordable Housing Appeals Act. That's what everybody thinks about when they hear about it. The regulatory structure of that is, if a town like Ashford does not have 10% of their housing stock as deed restricted, a developer could come in and propose an affordable housing development. They would be under no obligation to meet any zoning criteria. They could build as tall, as big, as wide. They could put in as many or as few parking spaces as they wanted, lighting standards, everything, basically go out the window. The only thing they have to demonstrate is compliance with public health and safety, right? Septic, fire, building code, those things they have to meet. So the incentive to a town is, if you create barriers for these, they can come back and do it however they want. So you can create incentive housing zones to give people, to encourage them in certain places. You can take fee in lieu of affordable housing units so that the town can use that money to implement these units elsewhere. So a lot of different ways, but not necessarily just a pot of money like an open space grant, for example, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you.
The term unfunded mandate comes up. Anything else from anyone? Michael, you're all set with your presentation?
Yeah, so I just think that kind of important to note that this is kicking off the process. I'm going to try to get all this stuff on the town's website. We're going to be working through pulling together a community survey, which then we'll publish widely, and we'll get people's input that way. So that's kind of the next step, but this is going to be a multi-meeting type deal. This is not a one and done. So we certainly want to keep people engaged, but as you mentioned, Jeff, if people want to be kept in the loop, they can reach out to me. We're going to allow people to sign up with the survey so we can create like an email blast. So this is not over after tonight. Many opportunities to hear from folks.
Is this something you could put on Text My Gov?
We
Working with,
probably,
Katie?
yeah, I think we can certainly advertise the survey as part of that. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know the limitations or what we can and can't do with that, but we'll certainly be using that as we get into the public outreach part of this.
Because I know there've been some special requests for some special categories and things like that. And I don't know if there is a catch-all miscellaneous one, or, you know, we need something more direct like that. But I know the selectmen have been looking at increasing the number of categories to gain information regarding the town. So. All right. Well, again, thank you, Michael. Thank you, attendees who attended for the presentation itself. We appreciate it. Again, we've got, without, you know, the Office of Policy and Management or anyone over our head, you know, it'd be nice to move forward or have something put to paper for July 1 in case the selectmen do need to generate a letter explaining why our plan is not done. But if we can move forward, similar to what we did the POCD, we got that done in a timely fashion. But we'll keep moving forward with this. So again, thank you. Okay, moving on with our meeting. Correspondence. We have a letter that was received. It actually went to the Board of Selectmen originally, and it's regarding amendments to the zoning regulations. I will attempt to read this into the record to meet everyone's needs for information. Again, this was received in the Selectman's office on February 16th. It is coming from Claudia Urson of Varga Road and Steve and Mary Mariko of Varga Road also. To the Board of Selectmen, recommendation to amend the zoning regulation, Ashford zoning regulations. Dear Board of Selectmen, we respectfully submit this letter to the Ashford Board of Selectmen to recommend amendments to the town's zoning regulations. We're requesting an immediate moratorium on all activities related to industrial scale indoor farming and cannabis sativa cultivation, dispensing and related development and commercial activities until the town has considered, reviewed, and enacted amendments to PZC regulations that fully address significant potential impacts to the town. We note that other Connecticut towns are taking similar action. Background, as you are aware, the industry known as indoor farming is actively pursuing developments in our state and in Ashford. While these developments are being promoted as smart farms and claim to be agricultural, the definition of agriculture includes clear direction that nothing herein shall restrict the power of a local zoning authority. Connecticut General Statute, Section 1-1Q. In addition, the recent legislation of recreational marijuana and current cannabis sativa cultivation activities planned for these indoor farm factories gives the town additional impetus to be proactive due to significant community environmental impacts. It should be noted that hemp and marijuana are the same plant, cannabis sativa. Greenhouse factory buildings, associated industrial scale facilities, infrastructure, and other requirements appear to be logically covered under the PZC regulations and Article 4 zones. Amending Article 4 now to eliminate potential confusion and lack of clarity as to what constitutes agriculture is easily important in the context of farmland preservation, conservation, and zoning regulations to protect residential areas. Article 4 zone applicability factors. There are compelling reasons for amending Article 4 to specifically define and regulate industrial scale indoor farming and cannabis sativa cultivation. The state law legalizing recreational use of marijuana specifically states that it is not agriculture. The demand for commercial scale electric grid support, e.g. 2+ megawatts per day, and substantial water use, e.g. 1.1+ million gallons a year, can be best addressed in a location more proximate to these services. The commercial or developmental zones can also be best support the development of on-site power generation capabilities like solar arrays, cogeneration facilities, and similar industrial development. While industrial equipment and infrastructure will increase production capacity, the longer-term business plan for this type of manufacturing relies on scale to maximize profits. The thoughtful siting of these facilities, which will emit all-night light and significant noise from large fans and air filtration systems, is imperative. Records and research also indicate that pungent odors are a byproduct of all cannabis cultivation, so siting this development away from residential areas is logical. As cannabis factory operators seek state licenses for marijuana cultivation, which is the logical next step as it is an emerging local market in Connecticut, this industry's security requirements can be most practically met in the development and commercial zones. Another consideration directly applicable to the Article 4 zones is the importance of appropriately supporting the significant traffic load, including but not limited to the delivery of substantial loads of fertilizer, soil for large concrete planters, as well as removal of the same, as well as easy truck access to interstate transportation systems. These factories are designed to maximize production volume running 24/7, 365, and need ready-to-access interstate transportation for their fully packaged final products and monthly crop cycles. Within the eventful federal legalization of recreational marijuana nationwide, Connecticut cultivators will face higher volume, lower cost, and out-of-state competitors, so ease of access to interstate transportation may be increasingly vital to survive financially. The town's amendment, Article 4D, is also consistent with the state's direction to support industrial scale indoor farming developments on brown sites like the former tobacco factory in Suffield. And I'm not going to go through quoting the link that's on here that is available to all the commission members, and will prevent conflict with other zoning regulations such as residential/agricultural zones. It is also notable that the legislature recently has been considering amendments to improve regulation of siting solar facilities to protect open farmland and forests. This legislative action underscores the increasing importance of protecting and maintaining open farmland and forests in Connecticut, and the amendment of Article 4 takes a proactive and positive approach to supporting innovative indoor farming factories in an environmentally sensible way. We appreciate the town's timely consideration of this recommendation and a decision and direction to engage the Planning and Zoning Commission to study the matter and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. Very truly yours, Claudia Urson, Steve Marico, and Mary Marico. Then there are just a couple of exhibits there talking about the cannabis industry. I just want to make the commission aware that there currently is no application in any way for cannabis development in front of planning and zoning at this point. But this letter was received at the Board of Selectmen. They forwarded on to planning and zoning. So we've entered it into correspondence to us at this point. I'll
Yeah. Jeff,
entertain
what you,
questions, short-lived questions on this, if there's anything.
Jeff, what you sent out
discussed
to
on that?
us was a amendment to the current RA zone that would put as a special permitted use 10,000 square foot agricultural facility. So
That is another item we'll be discussing farther down on the agenda. I will need a motion at that point to add that on, but we'll be putting that in under new business. That came in, that was received in the land use office this morning, and that's why it's not on the agenda. I did send out the application this afternoon to the members in separate email.
so
but
these two,
couldn't get it on there.
so these two items are not linked.
No, they are not.
Okay.
Okay. That was long-winded.
Wait,
Um,
wait.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I was
sorry.
muted.
I gotta keep looking at the screen. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I was muted, so I was waving. The commission passed a moratorium on, what was it, selling cannabis, but not growing it? I can't,
So can I jump in or no?
Please, Michael, go right ahead.
So, yeah, so in response to the legislation, the commission adopted a temporary moratorium on all adult use cannabis. So that was done. I believe the commission approved the language or approved the moratorium in October. So it would have been effective. I would have to pull the specific effective date. So we're currently under a moratorium. There are no license provisions under the state law, which would be eligible to be issued in Ashford at this point in time.
and since the state does not consider growing cannabis agriculture, how would that fit into our regulations?
So the reason why most towns have decided back in the summer to adopt the moratorium is because the state law says that if you don't create regulations on how to treat cannabis facilities, you have to treat them like a similar use. So as of July, when they were passed, if we hadn't done a moratorium, someone could come in and we would have to treat it as a similar use, which they're thinking in most cases would be like an alcohol distribution, sales, whatever. So the moratorium got us around having to be put in a position where we'd have to deal with this in that way.
But how about growing it? You wouldn't treat it like alcohol if you wanted to.
Right. So we would probably treat it like a manufacturer. You know, it really depends on the scale because there are multiple license types for someone who wants to produce it. There's a small scale and a large scale. But the long and short of it is you can't say, well, we don't have regulations for it, so it's automatically prohibited. That's what the state reg boils down to.
And
To the
hemp
point.
is, oh,
Go ahead, Janet.
growing hemp is legal in the state, isn't that correct? And that would be considered agriculture?
Right. So that, yeah, hemp is not considered to be cannabis. So the State Department of Agriculture includes the term cannabis because there's so many towns that allow farming activities by right that if you'd be in a situation where you could have the uses of these farms transition to open cannabis cultivation. And so they put that in there to sort of prevent that, if you will.
So that's saying basically if you currently are a farm doing tobacco or carrots or spinach or whatever your choice is, I'm sorry, Luther, don't laugh at me. You can't make a change over to producing cannabis as an agricultural activity.
You can't, right, you can't claim an as of right exemption for ag and grow cannabis. That's the only carve out. It would be specific to cannabis.
I'm not sure how to word this, but there's an awful lot of very specifics in the item that Jeff read into the record. Could we take what was put forth and add that to our moratorium on selling to include growing? And then that gives us a moratorium and time to study this and put it into regulations.
Our moratorium now includes all of it.
So that we really don't need to act on this at all.
The only thing that the commission would need to do is basically decide if they want to adopt regulations or do we want to perhaps extend the moratorium 2 or 3 months to give you more time. But as of right now, there is nothing that could be allowed under cannabis with the current moratorium. All 7 or 12 license types, whatever you want to call it, are currently not allowed.
And we
Okay,
currently are going to what, May of 23? Michael, is that right?
I think that's right.
I'm sorry, Dick, you were saying.
I would propose then that we table this and put it into our moratorium already in existence.
Yeah, I mean, is there an action required? This is basically a correspondence that we received that you read into the record,
Right,
correct?
right. There's
So
no
there's
motion
no
on the
action that
table.
has to be taken on this.
Right, especially with the fact that we have a moratorium in place and such. So there's really nothing to add to it at this point. Okay, I'm looking for hands. No one waving at me? Okay. Very good. Going on to unfinished business, number 7, discussion on 154 Westford Hill Road, requirements of the stipulated judgment. I do have a correspondence also to read into the record at this point that has to do with this. So I'd rather do it with 154 than do it as a separate correspondence to augment our discussion. This came from Brian Griffiths and a butter to 154 Westford Hill Road, Thursday, March 10th. Having received the March agenda, please address the following. Regarding the discussion of the stipulated judgment on 154 Westford Hill. The property owner has not undertaken reasonable efforts, item 1 in the judgment, to complete excavation. It is clear from our picture window that excavation is not completed. A document submitted to the commission by property owner in August 2018 indicates almost 4,000 cubic yards of material removed from the property. How much more material has been removed in the last 3.5 years? The stipulations that require the property owner to submit 2 plans have not been met, items 2 and 3, to my knowledge. Those stipulations should include the estimate as well as other information. Though I know it's not in the purview of the CEO, he has been helpful. I have been in contact with Mike D'Amato, trying to get copies of those plans. He has not been able to procure those documents. Have they been submitted? It seems town officials should at least be able to quickly produce a copy of the June 2021 plan. If no plans have been submitted as required by the stipulated judgment, why has that not actionable in July 2021? Legal action should have been taken if no plan was submitted. If they had been submitted, are the plans satisfactory to the commission? If they have not been submitted, we are requesting an immediate cease and desist of all excavation related work to make a level field for cows and goats. We request the legal action be taken if the stipulations have not been met or have not been met to the satisfaction of the commission. This is not only a disturbing noise situation, what the commission has failed to realize is that this is a health issue for us as well. We are now entering the 7th year that this exemption has been open. Many years ago, I submitted to the commission a research article on the health effects of excessive environmental noise. I advise commission members to be aware of the health effects of excessive environmental noise. Remember, there are 2 homes within 600 feet of the gravel processor and another 8 within 1,100 feet. Please do not allow months to go by before you decide how to move forward on this. By then it will be September and the property owner can then complain and continue with his excuses as to why he is not finished and apply for an extension. Brian Griffiths. Okay.
Mike,
So
I saw what was submitted. Have you visited the site and given an assessment of whether they have or have not done anything?
So I have not, and part of that is because the commission was in progress on this before I came to Ashford, so I'm not at all sure where they were. But there's a lot of ambiguity in what they're required to do and essentially provide. But I certainly could go to the property and I could verify or perform an inspection or whatever.
before we do that, I just want to say my comments are that I spoke with Ken Slater regarding this. And no, they did not submit a June 2021 plan to us at that point. Ken's input was that nor did we ask for it. So we did not reach out asking for the plan at this point. He recently did provide a estimate of material moved, which is about 6,000 cubic yards below the 8,500 estimated original amount. And also, he did not hit the March 1st date. However, he is in process, according to Attorney Stephen Penny, his attorney, who has spoken with Ken, and says that he is in the process of providing us with a closure plan. Not a plan for, as Ken indicated to me, not a plan for extension, but a closure plan, which means he would need to do his remediation to the area and be completed by September of this year, September, where his permit per the stipulated judgment ends. He does have the ability to request an extension, but in talking with Ken, his feeling was, and his discussion with Attorney Penny was that an extension would not be sought.
I would propose that someone go out there and find out where it stands. It was probably about a year or so ago. Jeff, you, I, and Alex went out there and looked at the site.
Yeah, I think that was December of that year. Yes.
And I would be curious as to how it compares to when we saw it then. At that point in time, there seemed to be no attempt to level the hill. They just were digging a bigger hole in the ground. And there was all sorts of equipment all around the place. So, I mean, I think we took some pictures at that point in time. As I recalled, what I didn't take them on my phone, but I think you or Alex took them on your phone. So I'd be curious to compare what we saw then with what we would see now. Jeff, were there
Well,
pictures?
I can appreciate that, Dick. However, I can tell you, I wouldn't know the difference between 4,000 and 6,000 cubic yards at this point. Unless, again, there was a picture of Alex and he was much lower on the hill at that point. The fact that they have provided us with an estimate, albeit late for that plan, and just talking with Ken, again, his feeling was we might go chasing after something that wouldn't be there, whether it was imposing fines because he didn't provide the plan. Again, Ken's input to me was that we didn't reach out to ask for it either. I guess that holds some type of weight in a court of law to a judge. So at this point, I did reach out to Ken again. I did that today, asking, does he have a time frame for that closure plan? And hopefully it'll be more than a single paragraph, as we've been provided in the past, as to what that plan will entail and when he's seeing to end between now and September 1st or September 30th.
I can't make this in terms of a motion, but in terms of a sentiment, this thing has gone on a long time. I would encourage the commission to have Ken do whatever necessary to bring this thing to closure. It's gone on a long time and we should, get this off our plate. We do have a judgment. And as I read, that judgment was signed by him and by you, Jeff. I don't understand why we have to ask them for a report when it specifies in the judgment that a report should be submitted. But whatever is necessary to bring this thing to a closure, I would encourage the commission to do it.
Thank you, Dick. Any other input from the commission? Members?
I agree with Dick. It's time.
I think most of us agree with Dick's statement. I think what I will do is reach out to Ken Slater again, have a longer discussion as to what our options are. I kind of did ask him in an email But I want to have a discussion with him about whether it's the imposition of fines, where we stand with not having asked for the report from June of last year. When the March report, the March 1st report, which is due to us, when we will see that, as we don't want weeks and months to go by on that one. And we're already 2 weeks into March and haven't seen that except for a single statement of volume removal. So I will reach out to Ken Slater and find out what our options are and come back to the group with what those options are and how we best want to proceed.
And Jeff, I would also add that Mike officially go out and document what the place looks like.
This is just an aside. I go by there every single day and there is no activity. I haven't been down the little road, but there doesn't seem like there's any activity going on at all.
It's kind of catch as catch can. I've been by there a few times myself and haven't heard anything coming on. And then I've heard or seen emails or gotten something from Mike that there was activity going on there that the Griffiths came in to complain about. So again, it's very intermittent. There hasn't been a lot of frequent number of complaints in any way, but again,
As I said,
some
that's
movement has
just
taken place.
From my, just wandering back and forth on that road every day, that's all.
Yep, nope, yep, thank you.
Jeff, there's no way you can see from the road what's going on there. The only way you can really do it would be to walk it and take a look at what's been done.
Oh, absolutely, no question.
Yeah, and just as an aside, the need for gravel and fill in the winter months is low. So it would pick up as things open up in the spring and construction starts to happen. So it's not unusual that there's not going to be a lot of activity right now.
Well, that's why I'd like to get this plan, this closure plan into us as quickly as possible so we have some traction. But I will talk with Ken about our options for bringing this to closure, hopefully, potentially sooner than September 30th.
Yep. And Mike, if you could get access to the site and document where it looks like.
Yeah, I was just trying to, and it's not necessarily something we need to go over here, but look at the specific requirements within the stipulated agreement, and whether or not what the process would be for us to get on the property. As I said, I haven't seen it before, so I don't know that I can judge unless there's some photos what has changed, but we may have to, I'll have to look at the stipulated agreement to see what we'd have to do there, but I can do that.
There were a couple things in here where it empowered the zoning enforcement officer. One is at the conclusion of the final grading. And if not notified of completion pursuant to, that was paragraph 4, prior to September 30th, perform an inspection then. I don't think there's anything besides the fact you are the zoning enforcement officer.
It looks
We'll
like
have
it
to talk
gives
with
me,
Ken. We'll have to talk with Ken on that.
it looks like it gives me that authority to do that on October 1st of 2022, but I don't know if I have
Final,
to do that.
final
ahead of
grading,
time.
exactly.
Well,
There's
they
no
have,
real. Sorry.
they have an open permit. So generally speaking, if someone has a building permit, it gives off the ability of the building inspector to visit the site and see progress. So I think irrespective of the legal document, that the town has the right to, since they've given a exception permit for them to do what they're doing, to go out there and simply give them notice that you want to visit the site.
We can always ask. I mean, and if we get pushback from the owner then, we can go through legal proceedings and what we have to do. And again, get Ken's input, but we can always ask to come in and do a site and see what's going on. And Mike, if you want company from a member of the commission, I'd be happy to go with you.
Yeah, as long as Ken is comfortable that we can do the
Right.
inspection, I mean, we'll probably have to request it or whatever, then that works for me.
Okay, yep, so we'll put that into the request too when we talk with Ken.
The one thing that jumps out at me from the stipulated agreement is there doesn't appear to be any technical language in terms of what the closure plan looks like, in terms of soil stabilization or in terms of finished grade and vegetation or any of those sorts of things. So I don't know what the sophistication of that plan will require from the property owner. But if there's going to be communication issued regarding any part of this stipulated agreement, it might be worth noting that most of the engineers in this part of the state are backlogged by a period of months at this point. So if they're going to be compiling a meaningful plan, they need to be starting that plan with an engineer now. I mean, it's a long
Right,
lead
and
time.
I think that's one of the reasons the March 1st date was introduced there, to have a plan in place, not that's when you start planning for that. Thank you, Luther. Okay, any other input regarding this? Okay. I am in need of though it has already been received, I am in need of a motion to add the review of a application for amending the zoning regulations. Wherever I can find that document. Here we go.
And is that
Jeff's-
to be added to new business?
Yes, that be added to new business.
This is Luther. I move to add receipt of an application for zone change amendment under new business.
And I'll second that.
And Richard seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
That was Doug.
No, I was
Abstentions?
jumping in late for accepting, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. You must be on a 5-second delay or something. So Doug was in favor of accepting, sorry. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved for adding this to the agenda for this evening. Regarding the application itself, I know Mike has had some time to review this today, and for discussion purposes, we have a complete form as the members have been copied on. There is justification wording in there. There is specific proposed wording of the specific reg to be changed, and fees have been received or are still pending.
Yeah, fees are received.
Fees are received. So to that end, we would receive in this application, and the plan as I see it, we receive it in tonight. We will give the commission members time to review the material itself and what's included in here, and place it on our April agenda for discussion. During that time, Mike will also send on the requested amendment to NECOG and CROG for their input as neighboring governing offices as required. And again, we would put this on our April agenda for discussion.
Does that
Jeff,
require a motion?
Well, it's a motion to receive the application. So I need a motion to receive this application.
I'll make that motion to receive the application.
And I'll
I
second it.
thought we just did that.
We did that.
We
Yeah.
put it on the agenda.
So we
I'm
did
sorry,
that.
I'm sorry. The first if I messed up, I'm
Oh.
sorry. The first motion should have been to add it to the agenda, because
Sorry.
it was not on the
Okay,
previous agenda.
okay.
So if you need to scratch all that, Valerie, I'm sorry. So first motion was to, again, add it to the agenda. Motion was by Luther, I think. You want it, Luther?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep, second.
and Richard
Yep.
seconded to add it to the agenda. Now the motion is to receive the application with its material completed as per Mike's review. Motion to receive,
I'll receive, Jeff. This is Doug.
Yep,
Doug's
second
motion
it.
to receive, seconded,
Dick.
Richard Williams, Luther. Discussion? Or you're just trying to get in a second?
No, the only thing I would offer is a friendly amendment to circulate the application to the Agricultural Commission for review and input.
We will be adding this to our material, but we can do that, absolutely. Because it will be part of the public record, correct, Mike?
Yeah, it's already linked with the agenda now, so it is, yep.
Yeah, I
Okay,
would
very good.
definitely want the ag committee invited to the discussion. I agree.
Okay, very good.
Jeff,
Um,
since we have Christine on,
We have a
On
motion
this
on the
call?
floor, Rich.
oh,
Yeah.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor of receiving the
Aye.
application?
aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? So moved on that. And Dick, no, we're just receiving the motion because we really haven't had time to review the material at this point. It can be talked to come next meeting. And then there will also be a public hearing because it is an amendment request change. So a public hearing will be required on this.
Understand that. Okay, so
Okay.
it'd be interesting as we start to look at this, to understand some of the rationale behind
Well,
submitting it.
The justification is in the application itself. Mrs. Sevo is more than welcome to attend next meeting and speak to it at public comment, or even during the meeting itself with gaining input as an item on the agenda.
Okay,
Okay. But it has been received and will be reviewed by the commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Zoning officer report.
So there has been, we've actually had a lot of applications coming in related to people getting projects, I think, teed up for spring. Also have been, most recently met with one of the neighbors on Westford Hill to kind of go through everything and working on the affordable housing plan presentation. So I think those are probably the most important things. Been working with Cheryl and some other folks in town hall to start thinking about strategies for hybrid meetings to get that kind of off the ground. I think that's probably been the bulk of the work that I've been kind of putting together.
Do we have the technology in-house for hybrid meetings?
So yes, the town has purchased an OWL camera which is probably the best lower cost solution for running hybrid meetings. There are things that we need to work through related to just logistics of getting people in and out of the building and how do you run the technology for hybrids. It's a little bit trickier with a group like this because we schedule our hearings 3 weeks right? When I run the legal notices, I say we're having a meeting at this location and at this time. And so the statute says that under certain circumstances, folks can request accommodations and those accommodations have to be provided for virtual or hybrid. And so we want to make sure that we're responsive so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where 4 days before the hearing that we've advertised in the paper, we have to change the format. That would basically negate everything we're trying to do. The other thing is that as of April, the last week of April, the law, which was changed to allow for hybrid virtual meetings, expires. It was
That was gonna be
originally,
my next question about the executive order, right?
so the executive order was originally approved, and then the last legislative session, PA 2129, said virtual hybrid meetings are now allowable, but that allowance expires in April. So there's a bill before the legislature now, which will allow it permanently and not make it run in conflict with FOI. So one of the things that a lot of places are sort of kind of in a holding pattern, so that we don't implement some type of hybrid meeting in, end of March, early April, to find that they've moved the goalpost at the end of April. So I suspect by May, we will know what we are operating under in perpetuity.
Okay, great. Is there something else? And do you still have hard copies hanging around in the office there? Or has everyone picked theirs up?
I think we have 3 left.
Okay, please, if you have the opportunity, please head to the town hall and pick up your hard copy, unless you're bound and determined to be online, and I salute you for that. Katie and Mike did a great job putting those together. It's all tabbed and in a great format for following, I think, as opposed to what we were dealing with before. So that being said, we come to the end of the meeting. Seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Janet, motion, seconded.
Second,
Second by Richard. All those in favor?
Aye.
amen.
Aye.
Thank you. Valerie, if you need any information or any attachments or anything, let Alex know, and we'll make sure you get those.
Thanks, Jeff.